Peter. So, welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, joined by Durst and Clint. And we expect Peter to be making a late appearance from Scotland here shortly. We are going to continue our deep dive into the cornerback class here in a few minutes. But before we begin, Clint, how many draftable corners do you have on your board right now?
Well, I think good perspective is, as far as numbers, I am 48 corners deep in terms of my scouting. You know, with there being an average of 36 corners taken, I think that's a pretty good start here late October. As far as that group of 48 I have, I would say I'm probably teetering on 30 to 33. So I'm right around where I want to be. I mean, I'll add over the next few months, if I had to guesstimate, as far as watching guys fully, probably another 10 to 15. So that'll really give me a good priority free agent UDFA grouping. But right now, I'd probably say about 30. I mean, this class, to me, is one of the better ones as far as the depth. This year, and one of the groups I feel the most comfortable with. So it is kind of fortunate for me to have gotten in this sub-series, to have gotten the cornerbacks, because there's just so many to go through. I mean, like I said, I'm sitting here at roughly 45, and there could be a legitimate list of 20 more guys for me to look at, and we haven't even gotten into the bowl circuit.
Right. So, and Durst, you said that you were at around 40 corners on your board as we were back.
It might be a little bit higher than that. So, preseason, I created a top 20 list of corners and a top 10 list of nickel slot defenders. And then we've, of course, added a bunch during this series. And I was trying to figure out just how much overlap was there between those two lists. But I think I'm over 40 now. I haven't quite, counted them out yet, though.
Okay. Well, we are going to be covering these corners today. We're going to go through Dre Norwood from Missouri, Smith Snowden from Utah, Chandler Rivers from Duke, Jaylon Guilbeau from Texas, Zeke Berry from Michigan, Xavier Scott from Illinois, Jalen Kilgore from South Carolina. And I know Kilgore is more of a safety, but we were trying to do a slot episode, and things may have gone a little bit awry, but we're going to leave Kilgore in, and then we're going to close out with DeAngelo Pons from Indiana. And the first player, Dre Norwood, he was added because he had really good PFF grades. Clint, you want to give a little bit of overview, height, weight for Dre Norwood, and then Durst can take it away.
Yeah, as you can see on the screen, Norwood, 6 foot, 187, kind of a slender built guy, but he's got some shoulders to him, as you can see in the photo, as far as maybe adding a little bit of salt and pepper on there. Well experienced, got him down here. He transferred this year to Missouri after 3 years at A&M. So he is definitely draft eligible as far as he's gone. But I mean, got him down here for 26 starts coming into this. A lot of tape on the guy. It is interesting, having said that he's more of a riser right now that kind of consensus is getting their name on. I mean, admittedly, Norwood was the one guy on this list that I had to go seek and watch before this episode to be able to have an opinion on him. But I mean, he's got a good background. Like I said, he's real well versed as a redshirt senior, 4-star recruit. I think he's somebody that's kind of built, like we said, the bowl circuit, just getting more eyes on him. I mean, even with this episode, like I said, what did I just say? I had 45 corners on here. And to your point about his PFF grades being so high and kind of having this rising surge, even I, as a sicko in all this, am just now getting on to the guy. So that's really more of the extent of what I have. Like I said, obviously, as we've said, strong performance here down the stretch for a really good Missouri team who's been performing well. I know they had a tough loss to Vandy. But he's somebody that's going to have some more key matchups here over the next few weeks. And, you talked about draftable grades, and I said an average of 36 corners in the last 3 drafts. The average of those is 36 drafted. You're going to see at least that average this year. And I think he's somebody that if you were to ask today is really there at the bottom of day 3 as somebody trying to get into that 30 to 36 group. So he's not going to go lesser than that. I don't think he's going to do anything to teeter, but he's definitely a name that, he's in there as a draftable grade right now.
And Durst, Dre Norwood, you were the first person I saw put anything on Twitter on him. But what did you see when you examined the draftability of Dre Norwood?
Yeah, and I lost my audio for a little bit, so I actually logged back out. So I don't know. I don't want to be too repetitive, but I missed a lot of what you guys were talking about. But he is a Texas A&M transfer with 26 starts going into his 5th season. Did transfer into Missouri. I do think he looks the part. He's got good size, length, and frame. But I felt like he gave up too much separation. So the games I watched was Alabama. He gave up 2 catches on 3 targets. Auburn 2 catches on 4 targets. And then I watched a little bit of South Carolina. And then finally I was like, okay, this was all old film. But then this weekend they played Vanderbilt. So I'm like, okay, I'll definitely watch this game because this weekend. And he only got like 16 snaps. And I saw some tweet from somebody as I was researching him that he may have actually lost his starting position. So I wasn't super high on him anyway. I kind of felt like he was sort of like my last of these 8 guys and kind of a fringe draftable guy. But obviously, if he lost his starting position, that's going to probably sink his ranking and everything. So I have him kind of on the outside looking in, but he definitely looks the part. He's got some athleticism to him, but I do think he gives up too much separation.
Okay. So the next player we're going to cover is Smith Snowden from Utah, 5'10", 185. Durst, what else do you have on Smith Snowden?
Yeah, so he's a guy that I kind of brought to the table. And not only is he a cornerback, but he has dabbled some at wide receiver and at running back wide Utah. So he's 5'11", 185 junior, a 4-star recruit, is a 34th cornerback. I feel he's got really good quickness. So quickness and agility is a strength. He's got that twitched up reactive athleticism, good hands. He's caught 100% of his career targets as a receiver. Now, that's not confusive with Travis Hunter. We're not talking about a Travis Hunter like prospect, but he does offer some versatility. He's played some boundary corner, slot corner, receiver, and also lined up in the backfield. He even has 9 kickoff returns. But I do have some concerns. Size, physicality, and play strength show up on both sides of the ball, on offense and on defense. And he may struggle with the bigger and more physical receivers in the NFL. I notice at times he gives up separation with the slightest of contact. So I see sometimes where he's getting bumped by the receiver or maybe being bumped by one of the other, basically get caught in the trash and just kind of getting bumped. And even though he's fast, I can tell he's fast, his short strides limit his recovery speed when he gets kind of knocked backwards a little bit on some of these routes. So when projecting him to nickel, I'm a little bit concerned about his ability to hold up against the run. And when he's on the outside, I'm a little bit concerned about his size. So part of me does think that, I wonder if he could maybe transition to a slot corner. I've got a round 4-5, actually, because of his twitch and his reactive athleticism and some versatility. And my comp for him is Adoree Jackson. Now, Adoree Jackson was drafted way higher. He was a first-round pick. But he also was 5'10", 186 pounds, 4.42 speed. He had 39 career receptions and 15 rushing attempts while at USC. So he did offer that versatility that we were seeing in Snowden then. But that's what I got for Snowden now. What do you guys think of him?
Well, I'd kind of piggyback that. For starters, I think when you kind of said that 5th round number, that's dead on where I was. I said I'm about 45 corners deep. I've got Snowden currently at 23. And if you look at that 36 average draft number, that puts him right around the 5th round. So I would echo that. Secondly, talking about the size, I thought it was interesting. He's listed at the 185, which is true. But going into the year, he was at 180. So I start to say that I think, looking at his build, that he's more closer to the maxed out on his frame. but at least there is some positive growth there going into this year versus the tape of last year we're building off on. 12 starts in the slot last year, fits more of that body type. That was an interesting comp you had. I really like that on Jackson. I personally had Brandon Boykin down as mine. That's a throwback name, a little smaller name. Former Georgia Bulldog, got drafted, played with the Eagles primarily. Speed guidelines similar. Boykin was a little more rocked up than Snowden. So I think body type wise, you were closer there with Adoree Jackson. Snowden is somebody that really the testing will be big. Him stepping on the scale is going to be a big spot, and it's going to be where a team projects him as far as their comfort level. Like you said, he's got versatility. He's got snaps at receiver. He's got snaps in the slot. That's where his starts are. I don't see him being able to handle more physical receivers in the NFL on the boundary. So his calling card or his ticket to make it's going to have to be more as a slot corner. But I also think that versatility to him does offer him the chance to be kind of that 50 to 53 player on your roster that you can get a lot of mileage out of, can play slot, can fill in on a special teams need. He's interesting to me. I mean, he's got enough twitch, and he's somebody that I'm interested to dig more into as we get closer to the bowl circuit and see where he fits in there. But, for us to be talking about, does a guy have a draftable grade? Echoing again, lastly, what Durst said, I think that 5th round is dead on.
And our goal is – go ahead.
I was just going to say, if anybody's listening to maybe wants to try to scout this guy themselves, the 2 games I think are really interesting are the UCLA games because he had 6 catches and 3 rushing attempts and a touchdown, and the Arizona State game because he limited Jordan Tyson to 5 catches and just 26 yards on 10 targets. So there was really a nice matchup with Jordan Tyson, although with a caveat, Arizona State was playing with their backup quarterback in that game. So there was definitely some that affected that a little bit. So But go ahead, Jim.
Yep. So ultimately at Draft Professor, what we are doing right now, and this podcast is being recorded right before Halloween. So we're a couple days before Halloween. So we're diving into the draft class now to try to say, okay, we have a draftable grade, but clearly there's still, 6 to 8 games left for nearly every player that we covered. So once the season ends, we'll come back to Durst and Clint and say, okay, show us your cornerback big board in December. And by then they would have closer to a full eval. So right now we're just trying to say like this player's part of the eval kind of thing. And the next player we're going to go to, and I believe this is Clint's highest rated corner in the show, Chandler Rivers from Duke, 5'10", 185. How high are you, Clint, on Chandler Rivers?
Yeah, I've got Rivers at corner. Let me double check. Excuse for 1 minute. I've got him teetering right there around that corner 12, corner 13 right now. And that'll evolve, like I said, as I get deeper into it. But he's somebody that last year I had to kind of – I was high on him last year going into the draft because, like you said – yes, the size concern of him being a little more slender, a little shorter guy. I'm not convinced that 5'10" isn't a little fabricated. Yeah, but 3-star out of Texas, really multiple sport athlete. But you look on here, 2022, 6 starts, 2023, 13 starts, the bowl game MVP, 2024, 13 starts, first team All ACC, Duke defensive MVP going into this year as well. He started all the games. So you're talking about a guy that going into this year already had 30-plus career starts to hang his hat on in a really competitive conference. And he's been able to match up well against some of the physical receivers. When you look at some of the pros of Rivers, we throw this term around a lot, but he's just a dog. And you have to be for him to have some lesser size. Incredibly competitive at the catch, rallies to the ball in terms of the run game. I think he's really fluid in terms of his athleticism and body movement. Said he's got enough speed to stay in phase vertically. I don't think he's got overly great speed, but you know what it is. I think he's great in off-zone coverage, which, does line up with the body habitus that you're working with here. He's just a smart player, got great route recognition, able to jump routes, and a lot of suddenness in his click and close. The inverse of that, some of the cons, obviously the size, and there's not going to be a versatility thing here. I mean, he's going to be a slot corner. That's going to be the only thing he is size permitting. And I think with the fact that, like I said, he's got good twitch, good speed, not great to really overcompensate that size, kind of like some of the other things I've already touched on. Would like to see him work on being a little more powerful with his hands versus just kind of pesky a little bit with it. But I feel comfortable in this range with him. I'll say this. I think where I have him is a ceiling versus me getting some more names in here. Maybe I'm trickling down. But he's somebody that I think would probably be around in early day 3. And I think that lines up with my comp as well. Right now I've got him at Clark Phillips III, former Utah corner, currently with the Falcons. Similar body habitus, similar college background, recruiting background, and maybe similar kind of career choices, kind of a top backup on a team who you can get some legitimate snaps out of. So, right now, as far as this group we had, I had Rivers up there in the top 1 or 2 guys. And he's somebody, you'll hear me say so often, I'm excited to see more on the bowl circuit. I'm excited for him to down the stretch. It's like, this dude's got 35-plus starts at this point. I think we've got a pretty good grasp, if you dive into him, of kind of what you're getting going into April.
Durs, where are you and Chandler Rivers right now?
Yeah, I like Clint's comp with Clark. I ended up going with LaMarcus Joyner, a guy that was drafted a little higher than what I think that this guy's going to end up going. I think he went round 2. And if I remember right, like late career Joyner maybe ended up like transitioning to safety, which I'm not so sure that's going to be in Rivers' career. Clint, you also mentioned his height or just his size might be a little fabricated. I think I got this from Dane Brugler, but he, according to whatever the source was, it was 5'8" and 5/8. So 5'8" and 5/8 of an inch, 184 pounds with 29 and 1/2 arm length. So that's going to be part of my my concern was going to be the size. But anyway, strengths. What I wrote down is Rivers has every skill, and I'll emphasize skill to kind of separate that from traits. Every skill NFL teams are looking for in a slot corner. Very physical for his size, has an uncanny ability to duck and bend around blocks. So whether or not he's coming in as a corner blitz or whether or not he's just trying to get around, one receiver blocking for another one while on a screen, really good at that. And back in 2024, he had 10 quarterback pressures, including 2 sacks, 8 passes defended, including 3 interceptions. His stats aren't looking like quite as good this year, but I mean, the skill is still absolutely there. But the question is, how do you value that? So I think the evaluation for most of us, you could be Todd McShay or Joe Schmo on the internet. I think most of us are going to have a pretty similar evaluation for him. It's just a matter of like, what value do you put on that? So because you're talking about a guy that's somewhere between 5'8" and 5'9", and somewhere maybe around 180 pounds. So this guy definitely has the outlier size. And this is going to be a guy that some teams may look at and say, well, I like the guy, but what value do I put on him? So I'm going to go off the rails a little bit, but a few years ago, I went to a glass blowing plant. This is where they actually make things like Christmas trees out of glass, and they do it like right in front of you. So I end up paying $300 for an 18-inch Christmas tree. Later on, I'm in like Home Goods, and I see some similar stuff like $60. So, well, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't pay $300 for an 18-inch Christmas tree. But I think there's going to be a lot of NFL teams that are going to have similar buyer's remorse, that had similar buyer's remorse. That and if they've been around for long enough, I think a lot of the owners, GMs, and scouts are just going to say, I'm not going to spend a top 100 pick on a 5'8", 180-pound corner. So So things like Lamarcus Joyner and some of these guys, they've been drafted that high in the past. But I just think that there's going to be like a point where like most teams are going to say like I think is going to be more of like a round 4, round 5 guy. So I know Clint was kind of saying that maybe what did you say, like early day 3? That's kind of where I had him. I thought you were going to be like significantly higher on him since he was your 12th corner. But really that kind of aligns where I have him too, as a round 4, round 5 guy.
So that's interesting as I'm listening, right? Because I think in the summer, there were a lot of people that had Rivers in their top 100. And the way I'm interpreting it is nothing changed on film. There's just players we like better now. But this is still like a solid prospect. It's just, the size beware.
Not to cut you off, Jim, but I could throw you a couple names because you're dead on. I mean, just looking at my board as far as people that I was not aware of in summer scouting that this year have really surged for me. Julian Neal out of Arkansas, 6'2", 205-plus pound corner, very much a different prospect. You keep going down, Colton Hood's really come on strong with Tennessee, building off of that transfer from Colorado. And then I think the easiest name to go to that's just roaring is Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. I mean, that's 3 right there that we couldn't have accounted for. So I think you're absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's also just more of a skills over traits kind of guy. So he's got the skills, like people who are into like grading the skills are gonna be like in love with this guy still. I think there's definitely gonna be tons of people who still have him as a top 100 guy. But then when you look at the traits, then that's when I think some people may have a different opinion. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and I think there's 2 other really good points to make here. One is that if you're taking a player that is 5'8", 185 pounds in the first 2 rounds, you're giving him a 4-year guaranteed contract. And right now, Tank Dell, his body didn't hold up. And I realized Tank Dell was even lighter than the 185 we're showing for Rivers here. But there's a pretty good history, Durst, as you alluded to, of some of these smaller guys not making it to their second contract. Right? So as an NFL GM, you have to be aware of that. And then the other question I was going to have is, Clint, you said cornerback 13, day 3.
Yeah, some of my math might have to line up a little bit more with that. But as I said, I think that number I gave is a ceiling. So I think maybe you could more average that out to he's looking probably in that corner 16, 17 range.
Okay.
And I think that will line more with an early 4, which, like I said, to my comp of Clark Phillips, that's exactly where Atlanta took him. I think with his size, he's going to be hard-pressed to get into day 2, particularly with the depth of corners that there are. But, no, you're right to check that math a little bit. That'll even out for this to be 2 days before Halloween.
Yeah. The engineer's doing math to check
there
the accounts. It's just the way that it goes. The next player we're going to cover is Jaylon Guilbeau from Texas, 6 feet, 183 pounds. Durst, what else do you have on the Texas corner?
Yeah, so he was a 4-star recruit in the 20th ranked corner in that recruiting class. I have him primarily. Well, he was primarily a slot corner during his first 3 seasons. So he had 4 starts prior to becoming the team's starting nickel in 2024. And then he's moved on to working on the outside this year. I actually would love to have him still in the slot. So Texas has got a true freshman that they're playing in the slot who seems to be like, that guy looks like a first round kind of guy. And I'd like to have him because he's got all the height and the length and everything like that working on the outside, and have Guilbeau still in the slot. So I do feel like he appeared to play better in 2024 as a slot corner than maybe being somewhat miscast on the outside. And I'm not so sure he's got really good like processing and reacting abilities. So I've watched a lot of this guy, but I don't feel like I have a good feel for him. But I have him as a round 5, round 6 guy. So maybe I can notch below all the other guys other than the Missouri kid. Norwood. Yeah. So Clint, what do you have on Guilbeau?
Building off on some of that, I agree. I like more of his tape playing the 13 starts last year in the slot and then the 4 he had the 2 years prior. Because he's got good adequate speed, good short area quicks. I think the instincts are okay. And I think some of that is reflective in the fact not really any ball production. Guy doesn't have a career interception, for example. I think that's something that quantitatively adds to what your point was. I thought he takes on blocks pretty well considering he's light in the jeans. I mean, you can just look at the photo right there. See, he's not a huge guy. But on the flip of that, 15% missed tackle rate over his career heading into the year. That's something he's going to have to improve on. And someone's going to have to project him, like we're saying. Does he kick back inside, which I think will likely happen. But guy's quick to the ball. I like his short area quicks more so than his long speed, which, again, would fit better at his slot usage. And another big con I had that I think does not fit as well with him on the boundary is when he's kind of at the catch point or making contact at the top of a route, I think his feet stop, really kind of stops his momentum. He's somebody that I have teetering closer to that, as you said. You said fifth, sixth. I'd say probably sixth, seventh right now. So very close there. But you said somebody you don't have as good a grasp on. He's somebody I'm going to have to dive into again between now and us getting into more of the bowl circuit in the new year to see if I affirm kind of where I am right now. But I don't see it much higher than that.
Okay. Next player, Zeke Berry from Michigan, cornerback, 5'11", 196. Clint, what did you have on Zeke Berry?
He's one of the more fun watches tape-wise, and he's somebody I'm a little interested just to see where consensus ends up with him because he's a name that you don't really see anywhere as far as popularity right now. But a lot of
Professor Special right here.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, a lot of versatility to him in the fact that he's got snaps all over the place. He's got snaps at slot, boundary, and even playing at safety. I'm sure there'll be some people that project him there. Kind of going back to the LaMarcus Joyner mention as kind of a smaller guy playing at safety, which, he's not small, 5'11", right under 200, and he's well built, very proportional. I like Berry a lot. I don't know where I stand as much on him as far as a positional ranking spot. I'm feeling that out a little bit, but he's definitely a draftable player for me, no question. And as far as this list, one of the guys I'm more excited about. And if you ask me to give a short list of any position in the draft, as far as someone that I want to see more of and want to see have a strong finish to the year, want to see get a good bowl invite, and see coaches there kind of play around with them, whether it be slot outside, giving him some safety snaps. And what did I say earlier as far as Snowden, as far as a guy, a 50 to 53 spot on your roster player? I think there's a lot of snaps to be had here. Hell, we hadn't even mentioned special teams or anything like that. I'm talking about defensive snaps. And he's coming from Michigan. I mean, he's played against some big physical receivers and going to continue to down the stretch. I like Berry a lot. You can hear me being a little excited about the guy. There is, if you really love this shit and you like watching tape and you like digging into deeper day 3 prospects that not everyone's got the name and not the buzzword and you don't hear beaten to death, like, haven't heard about Caleb Downs yet, for example. This is a fun guy for that. And so that qualifies for me for sure.
So, but right now, regardless of which position, you project him to day 3. You don't see him climbing into your top 100.
Yeah, he'll be a day 3 player. I think. It's kind of
day
a double.
Day 3 is fair. I'm just trying to maybe understand the ceiling.
Yeah, it might be a little bit of a double-edged sword that I said he can play so many roles for you, but you almost wonder if he finds that spot that gives him a top. It gives him a day 2 value. I don't know that in day 2, many teams will want to say, I wonder where the spot is for this guy versus saying, I know a spot for him to start day 1. So that might be a little bit of a cheap answer for me. But as I said, somebody I'm still excited to see down the stretch and kind of feeling out while simultaneously being excited about.
Okay. Durst, where are you on Zeke Berry from Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, Clint, I see exactly what you're saying. So, I mean, I think he would be an ideal fourth corner for somebody with some versatility. He's got the outside versatility. I really don't think he's lacking in any physical ability. Size, speed, fluidity, change of direction. I do believe he has all that, and you do see a lot. Like he was a little of a slow burn for me because I really liked Jair Hill, and I liked him like better. So Jair Hill is younger. He has more length. I think he's a little bit faster. But the more I watch the other guy on the other side, he's got a lot of pass breakups on tape. He's got good drive to the ball. There was one particular play against Indiana where he was kind of behind the guy, and this was the 2024 Indiana tape, but he drove on the ball in a quick slant, and I think that's. I just blocked out the big Indiana kid's name. Yeah, Surratt. Yeah, I think he was going Surratt on that one. And then there was also one late in the game that pretty much sealed the game in the bowl game against Alabama. He had a late pass breakup that was like, I think, third down. And so I think there was still like a fourth down that the quarterback just grounded it. And then he showed a lot of hustle and long speed when tracking down a USC ball carrier. So this is a running back that ended up kind of going in the middle and then cutting to the sideline on the left. And he came all the way from the opposite sideline and tracked him down. So I do think he's really just not lacking in any like physical capabilities. But this seems like there's just it's just not quite there for him. So I don't really see him as being a day 2 pick. But I do have him as a round 4 pick. So really just outside that. So just slightly ahead, I think, of where Clinton has him. But I see him as like a pretty solid, traits-based round 4 pick.
Okay. So the group of most of the 8 players were put together because I went to the draft professor chat and I said, who are the Jordan Hancocks of the 2025 draft? And I think, as I'm listening to you guys, Zeke Berry epitomizes that, right? This is a player where there's 3 possible position projections for him. So I'm curious, Clint, how would you compare Berry to Hancock? Compare, contrast them?
I think, one, that's pretty dead on. I wasn't aware that was kind of the question you asked when compiling this list. I think I'd be a hair higher on Berry even than Hancock at the time. But that's very well put. I like that. And lastly, I would just say, and to even more add to that excitement, as far as the versatility, it's like, hell, I think I enjoyed watching the safety snaps as much. Just talking about, I enjoyed seeing that. So Hancock's a nice mention. That's one that I had to take off the top of the dome right there on the fly. But that's good perspective. That is. I mean, if you had to pick of the ones of, you said the whole list was kind of built like that. If you had to pick the number 1, this is probably your dude.
And Durst, how about you? How would you compare Berry to Hancock?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually did not have a comp for Berry, and so I may end up using that comp. But to me, I think Hancock, if I remember him correctly at this point, was maybe more physical. And I think Berry might be slightly more athletic and stuff in terms of like a RAS, relative athletic score. I think maybe Berry might score a little bit better, but I think maybe there was just a little bit more steadiness to Hancock's game, and I think a little bit more physicality to it. Now, one other thing you mentioned about the safety reps, Berry actually was the 13th ranked high school safety in that class. So he's transitioned primarily to corner, but he definitely has a safety background there.
I'd throw a comp in here. My comp for Berry's Logan Ryan, retired, 11-year vet, played with the Titans. And it's interesting to even add to this discussion. First 7 years of that 11-year career, you had Ryan at corner. Last 4 years, he played safety. And I know that can be a traditional kind of transition for guys, but I think that just adds even more to the profile of what we could be looking at with Barry and adding to his career longevity potentially.
Yep. And so the funny Jordan Hancock story. So he obviously plays for my Buffalo Bills. But like Buffalo's front office was doing some mock drafts a couple days before the NFL draft. And they were using like different decision-making matrices. And basically Jordan Hancock was like the least common denominator on 2 or 3 of the scouts' decision matrices. Like, if the draft doesn't go your way, just grab Jordan Hancock there. If the draft doesn't go your way a different way, just grab Jordan Hancock. So that might be the Zeke Berry path to getting drafted. But I loved hearing that from both of you. That was actually a fun discussion, and that's why I love doing podcasts like this.
Real quick,
Okay.
Jordan Hancock was my 4th ranked nickel slot defender on my final big board for the 2024 draft.
Okay. So another player that fit the description of what position is he is Xavier Scott from Illinois, 5'11", 195. Now, Scott, I believe, is out for the rest of the year, but he should be able to participate in some of the draft things leading up to the draft, such as the combine. But Durst, what do you have on Xavier Scott, and talk about his scouting report and position flexibility?
Yeah, so I was very high on him, not as high as some people like Hank, but I was very high on Xavier Scott coming into the season. He's 5'11", 198 senior, former 3-star recruit and a 3-year starter. So I have him as with excellent ball skills and tackling consistency, can play anywhere in the secondary, good fluidity, agility, instincts, and reactionary quickness. I basically said he's of the Brian Branch archetype. To me, Branch was a little bit more risk adverse, a little bit more steady, and a little bit better in run support. I felt like Scott's a little bit more of a gambler and probably made a few more plays on the ball. But I have some questions about his recovery speed. I put out a couple of clips on him, and one is where Colston Loveland got past him, and I know Loveland was a 1st-round pick, but it is a tight end. It is a 256-pound tight end, and it seemed like Scott was having a little bit of trouble keeping up with him on some recovery speed there. There was also 2 times in the Duke game, one, and both of these guys are kind of like no-name guys, but Chase Tyler and Andrell Anthony. I felt like in that Duke game in 2025, Scott also showed some that maybe doesn't have the best like makeup speed. So I wrote down not quite as athletic as Quan Martin, trying to compare him to some of the former Illinois players, and not the punishing tackler that Devin Witherspoon was. But my biggest concern, and why honestly I may be kind of out on this guy, is his injuries and durability. So in 2023, he had a torn ACL and meniscus. In 2024, he had apparently an ankle that limited him during the spring of 2025. And in 2025, he had the season-ending foot and ankle injury. So all these feet injuries and leg injuries may have taken his toll. It's not that I think he's undraftable now, but I probably would let somebody else draft him before I would. But he was a guy that was an easy top 50 guy for me coming into the season.
Clint, where are you in Xavier Scott right now?
Yeah, well put already. I'd echo. Yeah, I don't think I was that high as Durst coming into the year with him. But kind of the cherry on top as far as the durability and injuries, particularly lower body, for a guy that had good, adequate, but not exceptional speed to start with. I like how Durst put that I let somebody else draft him kind of thing, because that sounds backhanded, but it really isn't. Scott is somebody, particularly coming into the year, I think was kind of a cult prospect. Like, he's somebody that you would see certain analysts be like really high on the guy and really excited about him. Interesting to see if some of those guys kind of stick through all this. But as far as some new things, we got him listed there at 195. I thought he added some good weight this offseason, which is kind of interesting with, having the lower body issues. I'd be interested to see how that responds. I thought he had a quick trigger as far as reacting to the quarterback and good anticipation. And he has good ball production. I mean, he did in his time where he hasn't been hurt. 12 pass breakups, 6 interceptions in the last 2 seasons, not including 2025. And he does have some of that just ferocious. I don't want to use the word dog twice in the same episode. Not going to do that. But he did have a little bit of that. But I think for him to have had adequate at best hips and adequate foot speed before these lower body injuries, at this point, he's definitely into day 3. He's not undraftable. He's not a day 2. He's definitely a day 3 guy. He's not even sitting down on the couch with his family until day 3. I think I would wrap it up with what Durr said. I think I'd let somebody else draft him, particularly with the amount of depth and variety of defensive backs in this class. But at the same time, if you look up and he's fallen a little more than you thought, let's say I went into it saying, I think he's a late 5, early 6, mid 6, and I look up in the 7th and I got 2 picks and I want to throw a Hail Mary on the guy. What the hell? Go for it. And lastly, I think I had as my comp Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who's currently with the Jets, and that might be a little higher end at this point, but some good perspective. I think. It's funny. I've said lastly 3 times and then continue to keep talking. But when you said the Brian Branch mold, it's like you could change the jerseys wearing like the guys that edit on Twitter and tell me that was Brian Branch in the photo right there. So that was a pretty good mention as well.
Okay, so I heard the grade, your positional assessment. Do you guys see Scott as a slot corner or safety for a team that drafts him?
So I have him as slot corner first, and this was something that was coming up in the summer, is that a lot of people were like, he was grouped him in more in the corners. I kind of grouped him more with the safety, so I'd be kind of like he's of the, again, Brian Branch type of slot to me, or even the Mika Fitzpatrick kind of slot defender. So to me, he's sort of like slot nickel first, safety second, outside corner third.
Clint, how about you?
I just said the same. The only thing I'd add to that is maybe at this point with some of the lower body injuries and the things we've already said, do you open the conversation of do you think maybe safety's better for his longevity?
Yep. So, and again, there was a method to how this entire podcast got put together, and this list was put together over the summer. Right, I said I wanted to do one specific podcast where we're not sure what positions the DBs are. Let's throw them all into one podcast and see what kind of discussions we generate. You guys think Zeke Berry will be higher on your boards than Xavier Scott?
There's no way I would have said that like 2 months ago, but I think there's a good chance.
I would just retweet what Durst just said.
Got it. Okay. And then the last player we're covering, second to last player we're covering, Jaylon Kilgore from South Carolina. He's listed as a corner on the slide, but he probably projects to nickel or safety at the next level. But Durst, tell everybody why they might like linebacker, corner, safety, Jaylon Kilgore.
Well, he was a true freshman All-American a couple of years ago. So 6'1", 211-pound junior. Now, I think at one point in time he was listed as 219 pounds, and that's when I came up with the comp of Kenny Vaccaro. Now, this is going back a little bit, and this is not a guy that maybe everybody remembers, but I remember vividly when he was at Texas because he was playing at 219 pounds in the slot with regularity, and this is probably the first guy I ever really remember being this like big slot guy and stuff. So strengths to me is versatility. He can guard a variety of different body types. He takes on and defeats blocks. To me, he's at his best when he's playing as the robber or attacking downhill. NFL. I do like him better at safety or for a team that wants to play him as a big nickel, which is when for those that don't know, this is when you basically put a safety in the slot as opposed to a corner. But again, one could argue that this guy's like blurring the lines of the whole thing. So when he loses, to me, it appears that he almost never loses because of a lack of size, play strength, or physicality. It's normally due to a lack of hip fluidity, change of direction to mirror and stay attached to smaller, quicker receivers, especially the 2024 LSU game. So that's why I kind of see him more of the safety variety of nickel as opposed to the corner variety of nickel. But Clint, what do you think of him?
I've definitely got Kilgore on my safety list. I think with the size, I think, one of my biggest comments I had was I thought when he has to turn and run, there's a lot more build up to his speed versus when he's coming downhill, which sounds like a captain obvious, but particularly in applying to him, thought there was more build up having to be done just in large part due to his size. I mean, look at the photo of the guy. He's got plenty of it. 211. He's definitely not a pound under that. But, I mean, he plays so damn fast. And that's one reason I like to see him with all the field in front of him playing from a safety position. High school was a big-time receiver, a lot of ball skills. He had 5 picks in 2024. Like to see that. And I think when we talk about his hips being good or smooth and adequate for a corner and in that slot spot, I think it's more of a plus when you put him in safety. But I really like the robber mention you had right there. That's another one you could throw in as far as a role. And I'll say this. He's definitely not a boundary corner. He had 20 snaps on the boundary last year. And not to say that we can't project somebody versus what they played in college, but with his amount of size and what you can get from him elsewhere, that's definitely out of the conversation. I would just like to see, as far as his transition from college to the pros, wonder with his tackle style goes very, very low. I wonder with the increased speed and talent in the league if he's going to have to adjust that a little bit. And he's definitely got the body to do so, going more for the midsection. But I like Kilgore. He is one, and it sounds like an easy cop-out. I'm still feeling out as far as where he is on like an entire big board. For perspective, I'm about 315 players in. I wouldn't feel comfortable giving a number where he falls there yet. But I do feel comfortable knowing that I've got him as a safety. And I imagine the team, kind of like we said about Xavier Scotto, I'd let somebody else take him. The mindset of the team that does take Kilgore, I imagine, is going to be a team that says, oh, yeah, we want this guy at safety. Can he play some of those, big nickel snaps? Yes. And that versatility is a plus for him. But I see safety prospect here. And I think, going back to the Jordan Hancock mention of that's what you were going for in this episode, for him to be listed as a corner, we both came out here and said that we liked him at safety.
Cool. So do either of you have Kilgore in your top 100?
I actually did have on the back end of my top 100. But he would be like hanging by a thread. I do like the versatility. I guess you could kind of describe him as a covered safety.
Got it. Clint, do you see a path for Kilgore to make your top 100?
Yes, I got 99 problems. Kilgore might be one right there at the back end of the top 100. But, there's definitely a path for him there. Like I said, as I'm feeling it out and feel better, you talked earlier in the episode about doing these episodes now so then when we do come back in January, February, March and kind of reevaluate, I could definitely see myself coming into an episode and saying, yep, oh, yeah, I got Kilgore at prospect 90, 95, something along those lines. But I wouldn't imagine a ton above that. But that's good perspective.
Yep. And I believe it's, on average, it is either 6 or 7 safeties get taken in the first 3 rounds. So basically
19 in total. So, that math would add up as far as projecting how many go day 3 off the top of the head.
Right, and this is a stacked safety class. So even if Kilgore only comes in at like safety 8 or 9, that's not a slight to him. That's speaking to the strength of the position in the draft class.
The safety class kicks ass.
Yeah. And if you want more on the safeties, we start podcasting safeties a week from Thursday. So a week from Thursday at 7, they're going to be diving into 30 safeties in 3 podcasts. So the last player we're going to cover today, and the height and weight is not a misprint, DeAngelo Pons from Indiana, 5'9", 173 pounds. I think Pons won the award for the most fun watch over the summer. Everybody said you need to watch DeAngelo Pons. Clint, where are you on DeAngelo Pons right now?
Pons is one that's going to be interesting to see if he returns, because he does have that eligibility. James Madison transfer that came with the Kurt Cignetti regime and just embodies everything about what they do there now at Indiana. Somebody that's definitely bought into that program. I mean, I said I wasn't going to use this word twice in an episode, but I mean, he's tough as shit, man. I mean, to your point about saying he was one of the more fun, if not the most fun watch in summer scouting, it's the truth. I mean, I would even have in my notes, like, yeah, size sucks, but I don't even care. Like, the dude just plays relentlessly fast, great change of direction, great mirroring ability at corner, uses his leverage. Everything that he can do to cover up his lack of size, he does. Kind of like earlier in the episode, we talked about some things with Chandler Rivers, like, would like a little bit more of that. With Pons, it's like, nah, man, he's got that great change of direction. He's got that great recovery speed, got great ball skills, great at the catch point, and he out-muscles his weight at 173 and plays as a guy that's more like 185. I mean, hell, he's got right under an 8% career missed tackle rate. That's a good number. I mean, just as far as getting statistical versus tape. Now there is some inverse to that. Like I had on here last year, he had 7 penalties in terms of being a little over aggressive, but that's part of his game, and particularly countering his size. He's somebody that a team's going to get really excited about, and similar in tone to what I just said about, his size sucks, but I don't care. They're not going to care. Like, you don't think this isn't some guy that like a Dan Campbell is going to get like real giddy over, or like a Mike Vrabel is not going to be like, oh, this kid will go hit somebody in the mouth. He's so fun to watch. And going back to my comment about don't know if he'll come out, I would predict he doesn't. I think he's just that much more fun going into next year. Because imagine we come into this conversation on these episodes next year and we look at the scale and the kid's at 182 and adding to that even more. He's exciting, man. I really like this guy.
So Durs,
and excited to see him in the playoff. Assuming that they keep doing well and get themselves in the playoff and just getting more and more competition and bigger receivers on tape.
Yeah. Durs, where are you in DeAngelo Pons from Indiana?
Yeah, so I mean, so speaking of the size, I think it's worth pointing out that one of his strengths seems to be his durability and consistency. So a lot of times with smaller guys, you see him more injured. Maybe you see like good games and bad games depending on the matchups. But I think just durability and consistency is maybe the main attribute of his. But beyond that, I mean, he's a quick twitched athlete with elite level click and close ability. He can run vertically with just about anybody. He's got a very good change of direction, punches above his weight class. He consistently beats or defeats bigger players at the catch point. But I've got concerns. So my concerns is that he has essentially extreme outlier size. I actually think he's going to measure a little bit heavier, and maybe it's just because of the way he plays. But so he's listed at like was it 5'9", 170. I think he's actually going to end up measuring. My prediction would be like 5'8", but then more like 180. So I think he's a little bit bigger than that. He looks a little bit thicker than that, but I think he looks shorter than that. And I think he's probably going to have like sub 30-inch arms. So that's going to put him about the first percentile in terms of height and arms, and then maybe about the 5th percentile in terms of weight. So, beyond that, Pons' style just may not be for every team. He opens the gate way too early for some teams, I think, liking. So he plays this sort of like side saddle kind of style, which is where you have like your butt to the, to the side sideline. You're doing this bail technique, and you're basically kind of facing the middle of the field. And I realize a lot of this is dictated by coaches. So a lot of coaches teach this technique. Nick Saban was kind of famous for that. I'm pretty sure Clint can correct me if I'm wrong, that Kirby Smart teaches that technique as well. It's because you can simultaneously look at the quarterback, the wide receiver, and the passing lane kind of at the same time. But it's not a style that always like translates well into the NFL. Like NFL corners don't really do that. So now, besides that, the thing about Pons is the fact that he almost never gets burned by playing that style. His quickness, his ability to flip his hips, his ability to basically just switch back and forth and change his directions from side to side. He's just so quick and fast at his movements that he can play this side saddle style, stop on a dime and make a break on the ball. So in the end, I think he projects best in the slot because of his temperament and because of his elite change of direction ability to defend like a two-way grow. But that's not where he's played in college. He's been almost exclusively on the boundary. So you've got the size concerns and you've got the question about his role. What position is he? Is he going to be a slot or is he going to be outside in the NFL? But hey, I see that we got Peter joining us. So Peter, why don't you get a chance to chime in on Pond?
I will do. Time difference is a wonderful thing when you're multiple time zones away. But here we are. Okay, DeAngelo Pons. Yeah, so I thought he was the most electric of all the players discussed tonight. I think that he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's absolutely everywhere on the field. He'll fight at the line. He'll fight with blockers in the run game. He fights at the catch point. I think just the obvious concern, sometimes he is outmatched in terms of that length and height. The jump balls are always going to be a mismatch, however aggressive he is. I think the recovery speeds is mostly there. He's a really twitchy athlete. As Dush was saying, I think the kind of, to bail himself out of trouble with maybe some kind of awkward technique. I think in terms of the way that he can manage to turn his head and still keep eyes on the ball, keep himself in position to make tackles. No seasons over 10% missed tackles in 3 years as a starter, despite that size. I think it's a massive, massive plus for him. For me, I think he is, he does project to the slot in the NFL, and I think he's one of the best potential options there in the whole draft class. For me, I think that he's someone that I would expect a team to take a chance on maybe early day 3. I think if it wasn't for the size, it'd be much higher than that personally.
Okay, so I think I heard day 3 from all of you. So Clint, because you said you had Chandler Rivers higher than Pons, and your grade on Rivers was day 3. Durst, I think I heard you say day 3, and then I just heard Peter say it. Did I hear that correct?
Yeah, I have him as a round 4, round 5 guy, and I did forget my comp for him, which was Travius Hodge Tomlinson, which doesn't sound like a name that like who, but he was the Thorpe Award winner his final season in college football, had very similar size, similar demeanor, but again, that size I think is one of the things that kind of limit him in the NFL.
I got Garrett Williams as a comp currently, which that pertains more to his boundary complete experience in college. As we talk about him, maybe transition into a nickel in the NFL. So I would be interested personally for me to find more of an inside corner comp for him down the stretch here. But right now I've got Garrett Williams in my notes.
Okay. So question, and Clint, you did a good job of documenting that he still has another year. So I think corners are more likely to declare a year early, right? Like that's a corner is a position where NFL GMs want a 21-year-old before they want a 23-year-old. Like the difference of 2 years is going to be at least 2 or 3 rounds on the draft board, right? The 21-year-olds will go early. The 23-year-olds are going to go late day 3. That's my opinion, obviously. But what do we think of, is Pons going to declare? How do you think, better to get another year of NIL money, or like Durst, where's your head there?
I think he will. I think he's going to test well. And Clint mentioned about, maybe putting on, some more pounds. And I totally see the value in that. But he ain't getting taller. So that's going to be his main concern, is probably less about his weight, but more about his height, I think. And, you guys can certainly differ in opinion on that. But so I think I would probably strike where the iron's hot. He's had a really good 3-year career. If he closes out on a high note, again, maybe with Indiana in the playoffs, again, he's been super durable, super consistent, and I mean, who knows what's around the corner. So I think he's going to declare.
Peter, how about you? Do you think DeAngelo Pons declares for the draft?
Yeah, I think it will. I think that as mentioned, that the height's not going to improve. I think the arm length is the other kind of main issue that's not necessarily going to improve. And he's not someone who's got serious technique issues or a lack of experience. He's pretty much been a full-time starter for 3 years in college football. I think that there's not anything immediate that needs to be resolved there. So for me, I think that another year maybe wouldn't add anything that we don't already know about him.
Well, not so fast, because I'm going to throw in a different take. I think he comes back. I think that NIL collective in Indiana is strong. I think he's somebody that is a career, like I said, with a JMU transfer with Signetti, and who's to see what comes of their season if he kind of gets sold on that, come back, take another run at it. But, would bettor's odds probably be better for what the two of them just said? Yes, but I'd go against it and say, not just to be different, but I think there's a chance for him to come. He's going to be one of the more interesting ones when we get to that little span of a couple of days where we're all clamoring to see who comes back and who comes out and how it affects our boards. He's going to be one of the ones that I have circled in red Sharpie.
Okay. Why don't we pause for podcaster identification? So, Peter, you want to introduce yourself, let everybody know how they can find all of your other draft content.
Yeah, so I'm Peter Quinn. I'm from Scotland in the UK. I write for the Join the Huddle in the UK. You can find me on Twitter at Peter Quinn 1997. I'm a Seattle Seahawks writer for them. So if you like your Seahawks content, then that's where you'll find it, on my Twitter page.
Burst.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter/X at Durst NFL Draft. I've been tweeting out all these cornerbacks, some clips of their wins and losses when the ball's in the air. Of course, you can also find me at the Mrs. Irrelevant podcasts on Wednesday nights. Like and subscribe.
Clint.
Yeah, most of my background is in covering the Falcons and the NFL draft for several outlets. At this point, I'm really, everything's found at Twitter, at NFL Draft Dome, or my name can find it as well. My Falcons are in a tough spot, so I think even more than usual right now, I'm going to be leaning on the draft coverage a little bit for my own sanity. But there's tons of draft coverage there. I'm incredibly active on Twitter nowadays.
Draft coverage during the season is actually a really good way to remove yourself from the up and down reactions of fans, because Bills Mafia is doing the same thing. They're making everything go up and down, but I'm like laser focused on draft coverage 5 or 6 days a week, watch the game 1 day a week, and then just rinse and repeat each week. And it's actually proving to be a very good formula. Welcome to Draft Professor, everybody. If this is the first podcast that you have caught with us, if you go to NFL Draft Fanatic on Twitter, no I in Fanatic, right? So NFL Draft Fanatic, the schedule of podcasts is on the pinned post. What you get with Draft Professor is daily draft content. So we're here every day breaking down different positions. So this podcast is Wednesday. This is the Wednesday crew. This is the 7 p.m. Eastern show. There's a 9 p.m. show too. Tonight, Owen and Jerry Ostrowski are breaking down some offensive linemen. But that's what we're doing. We're here. We're breaking down the draft class. Next week, we have 2 more weeks of corners. Next week will be a busy week. We have 10 corners to cover. The 10 corners next week: Marcus Allen from North Carolina, Christian Gray from Notre Dame, Jermaine Matthews Jr. from Ohio State, Will Lee III from Texas A&M, Takario Davis from Washington, A.J. Harris from Penn State, Damani Jackson from Alabama, Keith Abney from Arizona State, Julian Neal from Arkansas, and Traden Stukes from Arizona. And the last two, Julian Neal from Arkansas, Traden Stukes from Arizona, those were recent ads. Shout out to James Foster. I actually visited James's website, and he had both of those corners graded. The last two, Neal and Stukes, he had graded in a very draftable position, I think is the right way to say that. So those were relatively new names for me. But I will
jump in super quick on that and say I'm stupid high on Neal. I don't think there's anyone higher on Neal than me out there. So I will bring some definitely good geeking on that one next week.
Awesome. And then the week after, there's 9 more corners. And then after that, these 3 podcasters will have gone 6 weeks, have evaluated approximately 50 or 51 defensive backs. And sometime after Thanksgiving, we will come back and we will do a cornerback big board. So you'll get to see the boards of, how Clint, Peter, and Durst have their corners stacked up as the college football season ends. That's what we do here at Draft Professor. But for the 107 podcasters at the Draft Professor, for Durst, Peter, Clint, myself, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on a podcast again in about 1 hour.